The NPPA has capped the prices of about 108 formulations. Your reaction to that?
Yes, because I think this is a very unilateral measure which has not been thought out carefully, and the implications and the detrimental impact it will have on the sector. Because this is done without any stakeholder consultation or even understanding of what it will do to the sector. For instance, these are non-essential drugs. There are at least multiple brands, in many cases hundreds of brands in each one of these particular categories. And there are enough market mechanisms to bring about fair pricing. Now the point is, you cannot be trying to set price ceilings based on the lowest common denominator. It's like saying today that, look, we want every Indian to be able to afford an Audi. Therefore, we want all cars to be fixed at a ceiling price of Maruti. So basically, you're destroying brands and brand values. When you've got options, when people have the option of buying unbranded generics at a certain price level, then how can you prevent brands from creating premium value? This is destroying brand value of India. Brand value of India Inc., brand value of Indian pharma. We are considered the pharmacy of the world. You are eroding huge brand value for India. And this is something which I think has been very poorly thought out, and it will impact this industry very badly. Because remember, this is one sector that is very capital intensive, very investment intensive, because you need to invest in R&D, new quality systems. We are already having a lot of issues in terms of compliance with US FDA and the other international regulatory agencies. So there's a lot of additional investments required by a number of companies. Where is all that money going to come from if you're going to forcibly erode profits for reinvestment?
But the argument that it's being given is that profit margin cannot be above 25%, and this is primarily to safeguard the interest of the consumers, and that's why a step like this has been taken.
So I gave you the analogy. Why don't you regulate and nationalize all the industry? That's what is happening. If you want to nationalize the pharmaceutical industry, then forget building a global brand. This is really tantamount to nationalizing the Indian pharmaceutical industry. There is no argument that can actually have any rationale in what is being attempted, because there is enough competitive forces to give you those low-priced drugs. It is happening in every state government. I don't see what the NPPA is doing without understanding what is happening in Tamil Nadu and other states, where they are actually, through bulk procurement, getting the lowest priced drugs at the levels they want. This is first and foremost not comparing like for like. You cannot compare a large company that has made huge investments in capacity, in quality systems, in sophisticated infrastructure, with a small company that has not invested in R&D, not invested in international quality systems, and expect everyone to be on the same field.
But yet another argument that I heard today was that the same companies operate in much stricter rules when they are operating abroad, and why there are issues if certain regulatory things are here in India.
But not at this price levels. Please understand, what will happen is you will find that all companies who are under a lot of pressure, where it is not simply viable to operate at the price ceiling levels that the government has imposed, will simply stop selling in the Indian market. It will all become an export-oriented market. Nobody is going to sell in India. You're going to have huge drug shortages, and that is going to be very, very unhealthy for India.
Right. And also, another argument that in the short term it might be a troublesome issue for all the pharma companies, but in the longer run you'll have volumes actually picking up. You'll have a lot of people buying all these generics. Won't this help the industry in the longer run?
This is wishful thinking. You can get all the volume that you want through bulk drug procurement. You don't have to do it through forced discounting.
Right. And lastly, on the pharma sector in the budget, I was hearing you inside. You didn't appear to be quite satisfied when it comes to the budget, budget allocation for the pharma sector in particular. What could the finance minister do in this budget? What did you expect, and why are you disappointed?
Well, I was disappointed that the pharma sector had been overlooked, because this is one sector which is a huge manufacturing sector, it's a huge job creator, and it's a revenue generator, an export generator, and therefore I felt that, with the kind of global opportunities that we have, it requires more investment. It is capital intensive, and I think therefore we need to make sure that we actually enable this particular sector to invest. Now, I think with the kind of policies that have been meted out to the sector, it's going to be very difficult to actually make these investments. So I think my view was there were a few immediate things that we should address. One was that, R&D incentives don't cover international patenting and drug development costs. Now, on one hand, you've prevented clinical trials from being conducted in the country. So we are forced to do it outside. And yet we can't cover those under the weighted average tax deduction. So I think it's unfair. So that anomaly has to be fixed. Secondly, I think, we are looking at, obviously other aspects of how to, incentivize this sector. And of course, this whole price control and price ceiling is not at all good for the sector.
And like you had a meeting with the finance minister also, did he say something like, new reform measures and some emphasis will be laid on this particular sector in the next budget, which is just 8 months away from now?
Well, I think, the sector needs to have a discussion with the minister and the ministry and make sure that the problem with the pharmaceutical industry is that we are regulated by multiple ministries. And that makes it very complex. So, for instance, this whole drug pricing is mandated by the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. The Ministry of Health has another agenda. And the Ministry of Science and Technology has an innovation agenda. So, how do we harmonize everything?
So you were asking there should be some integration that should happen.
Yes. So I think there needs, first and foremost, there needs to be a good synergy of discussions between all these ministries and the stakeholders. I think we are not being consulted. These are very unilateral decisions that are being taken, which is very, very detrimental and unhealthy for the sector.
Right. And one very quick question. Last quarter of FY14 had quite a stellar performance by our company. What do we expect in the first quarter of FY15?
Well, I don't think I will be able to make any comments because I'm under the silent period.
All right, but do you see things getting better now from here on with the kind of budget that has been announced?
Well, as I said, our sector has been overlooked, and I don't think the budget is going to have any impact on our sector, but certainly as a business model goes, I think we have a very exciting business model.